my studio. Today we're working on the Alcohol Inks class DVD. As a lot of you know, alcohol inks are my favorite. We're going to start you with some simple techniques and we're going to take you to some advanced techniques. They're shot in sections, so if you have one that you're familiar with or you really don't care, just skip that section and go on to the next one. We hope you enjoy this video. God bless. I'm going to talk to you about the alcohol inks that I use, and there's some different brands out there, and but I'm going to go over the three that I work with. I mostly work with the Adirondack alcohol inks, and that is because they're the most readily available and have a wide selection of colors. You can find them in your scrapbook section at your craft store, or another good source is bluewheelarts.com, and on there you can also buy them individually, and if you buy them at the craft store there's a 3-pack in those, so that is good to know. I do like the Jacquard, and Maria Delos sells the Jacquard, and they are a brighter, richer alcohol ink, and those are a lot of fun to work with, and she makes a lot of necklaces and has some great videos out with that as well. One of the third options is Trans Tint, and they add the alcohol inks into them to make them alcohol inks, but the problem with the Trans Tint is you have to make such a large quantity. You usually are a little bit overwhelmed. You can buy them from some of their artists that have mixed them up, which is a nice way to go with that, but unless you're using quite a bit of those or teaching a class with them, that may be a little bit overwhelming. The mixatives are a lot of fun. We'll get into those in a little bit later. You have silver, gold, pearl, white, some of the different ones from Adirondack. Jacquard also has some mixatives as well, so check those out. They do carry them with that brand. The Adirondack and the Jacquard both carry the alcohol blending solution, or the extender, which can be used to lighten your colors or to move your colors around more. You also can use them to help clean the ink out of your brushes, but for that I just prefer using my alcohol, the 91% isopropyl, and that will clean your brushes out, and we'll talk about cleanup in a little bit later on. So those are some of the options that you have, and if you have any problems finding any of those, send me an email and I'll be glad to direct you. You can use your alcohol inks to stain or color your whole gourd if you want to. I like to use the cotton rounds, the makeup rounds. They're my favorite to apply the color. They seem to absorb it just enough but hold the color and release it to let you put the dye on, and then just simply rub that onto your gourd. And that is how you would use the alcohol inks to dye your whole gourd. And just rub that around and go back and forth. Another one of my favorite things to do is to use the leather dyes, this is red leather dye, as a base. Now, leather dyes can fade faster, but what they really do is have a bright, nice color for a base. So then we'll put our alcohol inks over the top of this when we're done here. So let's get this bright red color on. Now you can see that leather dyes don't go on as evenly, and you need to sand them more. Alcohol inks are one of the few colors that you can put straight on with not having to worry about sanding, so the color absorbs. So that's another nice thing to know about the alcohol inks. Just put them straight onto your gourd. You don't have to have it sanded really well. But you see how this is kind of streaked and everything. But leather dyes can have this nice base color, and a lot of times I'll use them first, and then we'll put our alcohol colors right on over that. And that's drying pretty fast today. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my alcohol inks, and on this color, this is Poppy Field Red. So we've got our red base, and then I'm just going to come in with my alcohol ink now and go over that. And then that's going to give you a really, really rich red, where unlike if you did it by itself, here I've got just the dye, and here I've got just the alcohol ink, and here I have the combination of the two. And see how much more vibrant that is. So that's one of the most popular ways to put on the alcohol inks is just to put them on. And I always say you can't screw it up. So kind of lay your gourd where it's kind of flat and just let it bleed out. You can have it go down and drip. If you don't want it to drip and it starts to run a little bit, just take one of your cotton pads, circle pads, and lift that up. Now shake your colors as you're applying them, but we're just going to apply them next to each other here and there. And you're going to start getting all your colors on. These lines are where the color ends or stops or where it meets. So that's kind of a fun thing to know. And just keep on putting them on. There is no right or wrong to it. Okay, you want to make sure you color up all of your colors there. Some red in here. If a color also starts to bleed too much and you don't want it to go out that far, take your heat gun and your embossing tool and start to warm it. And what that does is it keeps it from spreading where you don't want it. It'll kind of stop it. You also can throw some of your mixatives in here as well and go over them with your colors. I'm going to use a copper here. The copper comes with the pearl. You have to shake these a little bit more. They are thicker. So we'll kind of lay him on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over him with the orange and see how that just really takes off. And a lot of times you'll get that real cool effect. This guy's kind of coming down into the green where I don't want him, so I'm going to stop him. See how we have the copper on the side there. But like I tell people, there is no right or wrong on how you do the alcohol inks. Just don't be afraid to do it and play with it. That's how we find out new things, is just playing with it. And just go ahead and do your whole board however you want, just like that. Another simple method that's really, really pretty is dripping it. And I've done that on this canteen gourd. And what I like to do when I'm dripping it, so I don't have to worry about all the areas being filled in, I start with one of my lighter colors and stain the whole area or gourd that I'm working on first. So I'm going to use honeycomb on this part here. And this guy should have been conditioned. He's a little bit dry. The conditioner keeps it from absorbing in so fast on dry gourds. On the canteen gourd, you kind of turn it and move it how you wanted the drips to go. On this guy, it's going to be pretty obvious how we want his drips to go. So I'm not going to worry about that top here. We're just going to start by dripping some of these colors down just here and there. You could start them wherever you wanted to make them go down farther. Just add more dye into them. And they're just going to start to go down. I'm going to add some purple here. And if the purple like that doesn't show up as much, you can add your white into it and then add your purple on top. I'll show you what I mean here. I'll get this going. You can do this with your blues or any color that you want more true to the color that you have. So I'm going to put our purple on now. Just over that area that we did. So it's more purple. Your base, whatever color you use on your base, is going to pick your colors up more, so you can choose whatever base color you want, or if you think you can get it all covered up, don't put a base color on it. Just run it down. There is no right or wrong, as we've talked about. Some more oranges in here. Probably some yellows. You're going to start bringing these down. If you want these down, just bring them down some more. But don't be afraid to just play with it. Get some yellows in here. But know when you need to stop too, because we don't want to muddy this. We want to kind of keep this from getting too muddy. We're starting to get a little bit muddied here. But that is how you kind of do the drips. To make them smaller, don't put quite as much drip on it to go down. And on this one, I just would turn it sideways and kind of take it down. And that is fine just the way that is. And you can see that was a lot of fun and how pretty that one turned out. Everyone's going to turn out different, so don't be afraid to put your own touch on it. You also can add the mixatives to this as well. We'll do a copper here, because the copper, we've kind of got the gold colors going on. And you can put it on by itself, or you can run a color down with it. And by that, now see how gorgeous that one's starting to turn out. Isn't that pretty? I don't think those need a color with them. On this one, I'm going to put a little bit of yellow with that. And it just takes the copper out to the edges. And I really like how that looks with the mix of, but that is really starting to be really, really pretty with that. So that's how you kind of do the drip method. When you're working with a gourd and you want to put on blue, you have to remember that the gourd is yellow. So we have to get a base for it to neutralize the yellow so we can add the blue. I'm going to show you what blue looks like on a yellow gourd. Of course, blue and yellow make green. So there is our green color, and that's what it looks like. Now, there's a couple of different whites that we could use to neutralize it. We have mixatives, and they meaning these are a little bit thicker, and you can add them to your colors. There is a white by Adirondack, and it comes in a 2-pack with black. And there's a pearl color, and it's kind of an iridescent color, and it comes with copper. Jacquard also has a white, and the white in this one is actually thinner than the other, so that's another option that you may just want to add. Now, we can start by putting the colors out on the gourd, and just kind of rub those. I'll show you a couple ways on how to apply this. You can see it kind of gives it a chalky kind of feel, and I want to use my pearl and it's going to give it an inner iridescent. It's not as bright, and because we have a Jacquard one here, let's see what it looks like. One's a little bit smoother than our other whites. We've got the 3 different kind of options there. So you can, if you were going to rub them on, you need to heat set it first. And if you're going to rub it on, you've got to be real gentle and light. And it's probably better to mix it. And I'll show you that in a second, what I mean by that. Because you kind of pick that white up underneath it. But see how much bluer this color is. And if we don't have, we'll show the pearl over here and our jacquard color here. So now we've definitely are getting those blues more so than if we just put it on without any white. So we're really getting the blue. Now another thing that you can do if you wanted to apply it all over is mix the colors first. So let's mix the blue. I'm going to stick with Adirondacks because that's what I use the most. And just add some white till you get the blue you want in there. You can stir it up. And then put it directly onto your cotton round and put that right onto your gourd. And you can see that blue that we've got, that nice kind of sky blue. So if you want a darker color, just lighten, use less white and darken that up and you'll get more of a darker blue. The thing with alcohol inks is if you can go back over them and just keep on working them. There is no right or wrong with them. You can put a base color on just like that and come back over it with your other color as well. So there's a lot of things you can do. One of the other things that you can do with the alcohol blending solution is like where I did the lines on this one, you can come down and you can do this straight. You could do this with the alcohol as well. It's a little bit easier with the blending solution, and you may find that you prefer one over the other one. That's going to be totally up to you, but you can add more lines to that, and that's going to totally change the look of it. It will also do, if you kind of did little dots on it, it's going to be a little bit harder out of there, but you could also add little dots as well. Another way to add little dots would be with your Q-tip. I'm just going to put my Q-tip in the solution, and I just use alcohol on this. And we can start to change the look of our color. And I don't want it to run too much. I'm just kind of doing enough that it kind of spans out just a little bit, just to change that. You can do as much as you want to, kind of get those colors blending together more, or however you want to do that. Now, one of the favorite ways to do this also is to spray it with your spray bottle. You also could do a mister, whatever is comfortable for you. I will kind of keep my heat gun or embossing tool close by hand in case I have it a little bit too heavy and I want to stop it. And another thing will kind of do, if I want it lighter, I'll spray up above it and then just let it fall on it. You can see how it's starting to change those looks again. Remember, we're using the 91% alcohol, and then that really cool, already kind of got kind of a stained glass effect, and that's really neat. I'm going to do a little bit over here on this striped one as well. We'll hit that a little bit and see how that's already starting to change that too. Another way you could do it, people prefer one way or the other. You could do your alcohol inks in your toothbrush. Now, I just put my alcohol in my toothbrush and just straight on. Now, this is obviously going to be a finer mist, so it's going to be different than the one you did before. You can see just a little bit here, so it's going to be another way. You may prefer one over the other. I'm going to show you some of the ways I use the mixatives, and I'm going to show you Adirondack mixatives because that's what I use the most. The mixatives come 2 in a pack. The gold and the silver come together. The new kids on the block are the white and the black, and we're going to talk more about the white when we talk about the blue. And the pearl and the copper, and there's a lot of fun things that you can do with them. One of the things that you can do is just add them straight to your gourd to color your gourd, and you have to really mix these guys really well. You can kind of see them sitting up at the top. They should not be sitting at all, and this guy's got a BB in it. I don't know why the others don't. I should have my gloves on. But you can simply put it on a cotton round and apply it directly onto your gourd for color. Another thing is if you wanted to use the mixative and put it on with a brush and paint a certain area, you can do that as well. You could use your mini paintbrushes, or a lot of times I'll use the kids' paintbrushes as well. And then I don't have to worry about those later being one of my nice brushes. So whatever you want to paint on, but you can use those just in a specific area. If you had wood burning or you had a design and you needed it just in that area, you can do that as well. Now to clean your brush out, we're just going to use our 91% alcohol, and I keep mine right in my spray bottle, and we're just going to clean that right out of that brush. So we've kind of showed you what copper looks like. One of the other ways you can use it is with another color. So we're going to put our red ink on here. I'm going to use the gold. And you can see that just kind of do some fun stuff in it. Another way to do it is put the gold on first and then put your color into it. And a lot of times you're kind of going to get an outline. And let's run it here a little bit, but you can see it start to switch over to copper here. I'm going to put some copper in one here. I'm going to run one down and then put the color again into it. And you'll see it go along the edges, which I think is really cool. So just by reversing those two techniques, it can be done totally different look. You've kind of got this one in the middle, and this one is kind of on the outside edges. We did the one with the dripping, and this is how it shows up there. So there's a lot of different ways to use the mixative. So don't be afraid to try and play with them, especially in colors. Just by adding it in a color that you're going to maybe put some different colors on, we could do that. Let's put a green on here. Put some green, and just see how that's just taken off. Isn't that cool? I'll put some yellow over here. And that is really awesome. And you can kind of move these around a little bit if you want to. Maria Delos has some great techniques she has. You can use a little bit of your blending solution in it as well to kind of just get it to move around and do different things and play with it. So don't be afraid to play with it. Try some fun things with it. There's all kinds of really neat things you can do with the mixatives that way. So another thing that we can do with our mixatives is we can use them and splatter on our gourd with them. And let's take one we did here. I'm going to do copper, and I'm going to splatter it, and I'm going to use an old toothbrush to do it. And I'm going to lay it directly on there. Pick it up. And then just take my thumb and apply that wherever I want that to go. Now remember, the mixative is not as liquid as the alcohol ink, so it's not going to spread out as much. It's just going to be kind of a fun little feature that you're going to notice. And I'll zoom you in here in just a minute after I've got it done. But it really does look cool once you kind of get it on your silver or your gold and those little tiny specks. So that is another thing that you can do with it, and that will really look nice on some of your coloring as well. Again, I'm going to take my toothbrush and I'm going to clean it out with my alcohol to get that all out of there. You could use your blending solution, but to me it just is not cost effective to do that. One of the things I use a lot when I'm working with the alcohol inks is the ink applicator, and it is in the scrapbook section next to your alcohol inks, and this is by Adirondack, so it would be with the other inks. You have your little holder, and then you also have a couple of little felts with it. It has a little Velcro in, so all you have to do is put your little felts on the end of it, and then you just put your alcohol inks right into that. There is also the replacement for the alcohol ink applicator felt, and so you have a bunch of these because you will go through quite a few of these. You really like these. The felt is a nice consistency that you actually use less alcohol inks. It holds it just right, so it doesn't absorb it too much, but it absorbs it enough that you can use it a lot, and it really does save on your alcohol inks in the long run. So that is one of the tools that I use quite a bit when I'm using the alcohol inks. We're going to do the drip method, but we're going to start by putting our base on, and we're using our felt applicator here. And I'm going to just do each color at a time. And the felt applicator just makes the color go on so much easier. It's just a nice base. So we're just going to basically do the background all the way around your gourd. I'm just going to do one side here today. And just whatever colors you may want to put in. So I'm going to go ahead and put caramel, sunset, orange, sunshine yellow, and a few of these all the way up to the top, and then we'll come back. Now that I've got all my colors on, we've covered the bottom, so if any doesn't drip all the way down, we don't see it. I'm also going to use one of my mixatives, just a little amount in the, I just want to be able to show you what it does with the other colors, and I'm just going to put a little bit across just right there, so when the other colors run, you'll be able to see it. And we're just going to take our colors and we're going to run them, and I want them to keep a cotton round just close enough by, so if they run too far, you can start to grab them. And you can run these colors however you want to. The more, obviously, the more paint, the more it's going to run. So we've got that one. We're going to come back in our red and start that guy. And you may even want to go up into this a little bit and run that. We're just going to start running those colors down. And I'm going to go to the bottom and work my way up. So I'm kind of covering up over the top. So we've got that nice and down. But again, there is no right or wrong to it. It's just how you think it should turn out. we're going to go to our orange here, and I'm going to put my orange into my copper here. Get that copper to run a little bit, hopefully, with it. I kind of waited a little bit too long. Kind of probably dried up a little bit on me. That's okay. We're starting to get this kind of waterfall effect here. If you want it to drip more in between each of them, you just come back and put more in. But you get that real cool effect, and that's a fun way to kind of color that. You can see over here we did pick up the copper just a little bit. You also can come in with your blending solution as well and just hit that, and it's also going to make things run a little bit more. And just have fun with it, just play with it till you get that kind of the way you want that to look. One of the ways to put your color on is to use your felt applicator and just put it on, and you can do it with just one color. And just by doing that, you're going to start to get all these different layers here, and you may like it with just one color, just applying it like that. Of course, we can do it with different colors. Now this guy's starting to dry a little bit. When you first put him on, he's really wet. So let's go to another color. I'm going to use Sunshine Yellow here. And see how he's nice and wet. He bleeds more. He bleeds out. We're going to start bumping up next to the different colors here. So we're starting to get more texture, and then I'm going to go to Sunset Orange, and we're just going to kind of fill everything in here. Start to see these real cool effects. Now we also can kind of do it like starting with a base color. So let's do our red here. We've kind of done our red here. He may be too dark. We'll play with him a little bit and see. Yeah. Let's start with our yellow. And let's do kind of solid here, just like we did our first one. You can miss a little bit, but you want it pretty solid. And then we're going to come back with some of our other colors. Now, the more you want it to bleed out, the more wet or the more paint you should add to your felt. And you probably get a new one of these each time. I'm just recycling here a little bit. With your alcohol inks, not your paints. But see how we're kind of getting that muted look now and starting to get like we want it. And go back over those a little bit. When they're really wet, they're going to bleed out and not have as many marks in them. When you go over, when it's a little bit drier, you're going to get more marks on that. And I'm going to do a little bit of a video on how I kind of use that as well. So I'm going to go back to my base color here and just add texture, not so much as the color, but the texture. So there, we're getting that kind of like we want. And you can do as many colors as you want. Go back and forth, play with it. You can come back over with it. Some of the other things that you might want to do, let's bring in a little bit of a mix of here. I've got copper. let's try that a little bit here. Some people do with black with some colors in it. That's really kind of cool. So we've got the copper. Now remember, it's thicker, so I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to come back with my base color and put that back over the top of it. You also can come back over with your blending solution only and kind of move things around too. Let's see how we're kind of having to move that guy a little bit. See how that's really starting to get a cool effect. Now I'm just using one color on my pad. I'll show you what it looks like when we use the blending solution. And that's great to kind of move the colors all around. We'll go over here and we'll just kind of move it out. And see, it just kind of blends everything together, and you can move that around. So that's really cool to use as well. So that's how you kind of would use the blending solution with that, but that gives that kind of model look that everybody kind of likes with the alcohol inks. Here's another example of all the colors put on, and then I've gone back over with the blending solution, and I've got some black in there, and then that just really gives that a nice smooth blended look. Another thing you can do when you, if you want to on this, is to hit it with your alcohol, and that kind of even gives it more texture or more spots, so you have that option to do that as well. Another way we can put the alcohol inks is to put them all different colors on at one time, and I've got all three colors going on here at one time, and we're literally just going to apply the three colors, and you can have them in different areas. They don't all have to be in one spot. And I'm using poppy yellow, or excuse me, poppy red, sunset yellow, sunset orange, and sunshine yellow. So we've got three different colors on here. So they're already on there. Now when you first put them on, they're nice and wet, so we're going to not put them real close together yet. We're just going to kind of spread them all out. And then once they start to separate and you see that it's not bleeding as bad, then we're going to come back in and we're just going to fill all of those open areas up. And you might work on just one area at a time like I am, and that is fine. Now we've got those nice and blended, but another thing that you can do is, see these kind of lines here, is once you get those lines like that, to keep those lines, heat them with your heat gun. So we're going to get some of those lines in here and hit them with our heat gun. And just a little bit more. Because if you don't heat it with the heat gun and it continues to dry, they blend out and spread out more. So that is how you do get the little lines like that. And that's how you work with that many colors in one little area. I think on this one I used Pool Mountain Rose and not mushroom, but a brown along those lines. It may have been mushroom, and just kept doing it just like that, and you get that real cool effect. I want to show you some of the different things that we can do with the texture brush, and I'm going to start by putting our background on, and I'm going to use the gold mixative and just use it as a base to start with. Now while we're doing that, the textured brush is a Miriam Joy product exclusively. We have those manufactured just for us, so you have to get them from our website at miriamjoy.com. But there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with that, so I want to show you some of those. Got that nice and covered here. Another thing with alcohol inks compared to some of like the leather dyes or some of the other inks is you don't get streaking, if you happen to notice, and that's a really nice thing, because some of the other ones you can get streaking. So I'm going to show you, and I think I'm going to use my Tri-Black here. And I'm going to put it on a flat surface. The more paint you have on it, of course, the brighter it's going to be. One of the fun things to do with this is to cross hatch. And you can simply just go back and forth on that, here and there, wherever you want to. And that's a real neat, fun effect. One of the other ones that I like to do with blue in the winter time is just swirl it, and you get this really cool snow effect as well. So that's a real neat one to do, so it looks like the snow is blowing or whatever. So that's fun. And then one of the last ones that we can do is you can add texture to it just by putting it on where you want it. You may have other colors already on it, and you may think that it needs some more texture there, and you can just simply add that. We'll put a little bit on this guy here just to add some more texture, especially if you're trying to make something look old. Black or a dark brown kind of dots makes an item look a lot older. So that is something to keep in mind. Now those are just some of the fun things that you can do, and you can always change it again by putting that on there and then kind of seeing what happens with that. And keep your heat gun by if you don't want to have that spread too much. But you can start to change the looks of everything just by using your alcohol, which is fun. So we've already kind of changed that look that we originally started with, and we're kind of muting it out. So there's a lot you can do with the texture brush, so keep that in mind when you're working with the alcohol inks. Another way to apply your color on is to use saran wrap or cling wrap or whatever you want to call it to sponge it on, and it gives it a different look than anything we've done. I put a background on with the alcohol inks, and I'm going to use my flat part of my palette and whatever colors you want to put on it. I'm actually going to try and do a couple of colors here at the same time. I've got my Purple Twilight, my Wild Plum, and I think I'm just going to try and hit it. I don't know if I want pearl or silver, or maybe a little bit of both. Not very much of that, just enough, because they're so much thicker. The pearl is not as thick. I kind of give it an iridescent look. So now we're going to take our clean wrap, and you can do each color at a time. You don't have to do it this way, but we're going to kind of scrunch it up, not too much, and then pounce in our colors. And then you're just going to take that onto your gourd. Isn't that really cool, that silver color that you're kind of getting? Look how fast that is and how beautiful that is. And you are done that fast. One of my favorite things to do with alcohol inks is to go around and around and around and just using one color. And it's better to do on a gourd that's flatter. Like this guy is flatter on this edge, and this is a canteen gourd. First thing we're going to do though is color it all, so if any of it shows through, that area has color on it. There's nothing naked on it. I'm only going to do half of the gourd here. I'm using a Poppy Field. It's a real pretty red. On my alcohol inks. Okay, so once we've got our color done, what you're going to do is start just going around and around, and what it's going to do is it's going to, where it's going to bleed, it's going to leave a line. And you kind of want them to go together and next to each other, but we don't want them so far apart that they're bleeding together. So we're going to do a little bit at a time here so that we get both of these lines. And we'll let one dry before we go and do the next area. Or you can also come in and hit it with your heat gun as well. Now this first one, I really don't have its line set up yet. So many people want to know how we get that line there, but that's just the color itself up against the next color. So this should just go around and around. And if you need to move it around, you can use the mini paintbrushes to move it around. You also could quit right about here and use it for a rose. Now see how it's going to start to want to come off on the side there. I don't want to encourage it to do so yet. You can blend it out with that other color. And that's why I said it's so much easier when you're working with a flat surface. And if you do your rows bigger, they'll be bigger, so there is no right or wrong on that. They're going around and around the gourd. And just doing this all the way. Each time it's going to look just a little bit different. You don't want to quite hit it just with one like that so it takes off on you. And see how it's starting to do all of those lines, and you just keep on working it all the way around. Try to figure out where I left off here. And I'm kind of bending this up a little bit so it doesn't run off on me. And that is really that simple. People always try to make it harder. Just keep on going. And like on this area where you come back here and these guys are up farther, that's okay. Just take your next line right across there. It needed to be dry just a little bit more up on top for it to get that line. But just continue working just like that, and that is how you get that effect with just one color. I'm going to show you how to color feather, as a method I call with alcohol inks. I've colored my gourd with purple, and the Twilight Purple, and a little bit of white, and just colored that right onto the gourd. Now I'm just going to use just the purple Twilight by itself, I'm going to put it into the cotton round. And then we're just going to gently fold this over. And all you're going to do is just walk this color out. And that's kind of what I call color feathering. It works really good on the edge of a gourd or on a bowl, just on the edge. And it kind of looks like feathers. And then I let that first layer dry. And you can switch to a darker color if you want, or just go back over it again. And I usually don't go down as far. I keep that up just a little bit higher. And then I will even go back up and do a third color. So you kind of get a color feathering look. I'm also going to go just a different color here because this isn't quite as a contrast I would like it to be. So I can show you. Don't be afraid to use like a leather purple underneath as well. And remember, your makeup round is in half. And then you could blow this dry. And all of these colors are going to come to life a lot more once you varnish them. And do those colors there. And that's how we do the color feathering. On this one, we're going to kind of give it a modern art feel, and I'm going to start out with 3 colors. Now, on my base colors on this, I want it kind of iridescent, so I'm going to start with my Pearl Mixative, and I'm going to add that to each of my colors. I'm going to use a red, yellow, and a blue, and that's also going to make the blue more the blue color. And we're going to mix those here a little bit. And then I'm going to apply them on to the section that I want them to go to, and don't make them exactly perfect. And I'm just using my cotton rounds to apply them here. And this is so you have your color, so if you don't have it all through it doesn't show. So you have all your background color completely solid. I probably could put a little bit more white in my blue, but that's okay. So we kind of just bump them up next to each other, and that's what's nice again about the alcohol inks, is because you can do that. And you can do these straight inks now, or if you wanted a little bit more pearl, you can. And I am going to apply them with a Q-tip. I'm just going to put that into my dies, and I'm just going to start applying it. Of course, the more dye you have in there, the wider it's going to spread out. Once you get it absorbed, it goes quite a bit of ways. Now, you don't want to touch them next to each other, kind of let them dry in between, and that's what separates the dots. And then you can come back in. And you kind of want to walk your colors over a little bit into the next color. You don't want to just stop off, and you can do a little bit or a lot, whatever you kind of feel. And you can see once we kind of got this absorbed into the Q-tip, it's going to go a long way now. But we want to come in and really get those. You don't want any of the open areas. I'm going to finish off a little bit more, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next color. So I went ahead and brought my red. Now bring these out into the next color, but don't make them all even. You want them very uneven. And then I'm going to mix some white with my blue so that it turns blue and not green. Just a couple dots of white here from our mixative. I gave up on trying to keep my hands clean and trying to keep gloves on. That is nearly impossible. So and I always forget this is a lighter color. I always think this is a darker color. Back over those lighter ones with my darker hair just a bit. Nice thing is there's no right or wrong, and that's why we leave mistakes in our videos, as we've told you in the past. Now you're going to want to walk your blue the other way into your red as well. And I probably would have liked this a little bit better, a little bit darker blue background as well. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this color up and we'll start our yellow. So we're going to go to our yellow, and if you think it needs a little darker color, you could add a little darker, a little bit of a brown to it as well. I almost got a red, white, and blue theme going here. But when you bring these over, you want to transition them. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep dotting those until I have my yellow filled in. That is how we do that with our Q-tips, kind of painting it abstract with our Q-tips. So just do that all the way around the gourd. You can use more colors, you can use less colors, just however you see that, and just have fun with that technique. Another fun method I like to do is with a straw, and that's how we're going to form our little circles. And I took my purple twilight and I mixed it with my white, and I just spread it onto my gourd piece. And now I'm going to take my purple twilight and put it down. You want to make sure that you have a palette or something where it holds a liquid. And I'm going to be using malt straws, and they're bigger and thicker. And I'm just going to dip it into the alcohol ink, and you kind of want to go back and forth because your gourd is not straight, and so you want to try and get that whole circle. Now, because we're putting it down into the well, we're getting more paint as we pick it up, or ink I should say, and we're getting these circle effects. So, and I like kind of how they bleed and form this nice circle effect. And we'll talk about another way of doing it where you don't have that as much. And you want to keep that surface flat. You don't want those bleeding down. And like I said, you want to try and get them all the way around that circle. And just kind of get them all done there. Okay, so we've kind of got this different effect going. Now, if you didn't want them to bleed and you wanted more the circle part, we would do it on the flat surface. And let me clean up my last color with my alcohol and wipe it off. And we're just going to put, this is Wild Plum, and we're just going to put it right in the middle there where it's flatter, so you're not going to pick up as much color. And again, I need to remember to rock it all the way around so that I get all of the straw covered, or the circle made. And it's a little bit easier said than done when your gourd is kind of crazy like this in the middle. But you can see this guy is not bleeding as much as the other part was. Now I think it would be kind of fun to splatter this with some silver. And I think we'll finish it up that way. So I'm going to use the silver mixative and I'm going to splatter with it, and I'm using a cheap rake brush. This is not an expensive nice one. You don't want to use one of your expensive nice ones. And I'm going to spray it with alcohol just to absorb into the brush so that my silver will splatter. So we've got that all nice and neat in there. Now I'm going to take a different brush and I'm going to hit it, and that gives you your splatter. You can do as little or as much as you want with that. One of my favorite things to make with the alcohol inks is rocks, or kind of a ground looking, and I use this with my trees and flowers and stuff to make it look like a ground area. Nice thing is you can use it where there's flaws in your gourd as well, and just blends right in and brings that out. You can do it with one color of alcohol inks, or you can do it with a combination of several different color of browns. The first thing that I like to do when I do it is we're going to cover the area that we're going to do the rock on. And so if there's any spots that's not quite covered, you're going to have this background color on it already. So I'm going to make my rocks just about that area right there. And you're just going to tap on dots. And like I said, you could use just the same color, or you can use different colors. The more you pour on, the bigger the area is going to be. Now, like this is pretty flat, so I can kind of hold it without it running too much. But if it starts taking off, you want to kind of dab it. And you can do just a few at a time. When I'm working on a more curved gourd, I just do a few at a time and then kind of let them dry. But you don't want them touching, because when they touch, they just spread into one area and you don't get all of these different individual looks. Another thing you can use is your heat gun to keep the color from spreading and get it dried. Those guys aren't quite dry, but they're not going to spread anymore, so I want a little bit more bigger rocks. So I'm just going to sit there and hold that for a second. Got one in here I can do. And you can move them around a little bit to kind of manipulate them if you want to. Don't go over that area. You want to stay in just that area that you're working with. I'm going to go ahead and hit mine with a heat gun just to go faster. You don't want to blow those and make them run. And keep them in the area you had. You also could put them on with a paintbrush, but you're not going to get as big a spread out of an area. And you really want bigger and smaller areas. starts to spread on you, just kind of pick that up. That's okay. And this is all still with that first original color that we talked about. You could do it just one color if you wanted to. I'm going to stop and switch colors here. I'm going to go from lighter to darker. See if this guy's too light, or we may go to darker color. We'll see here. You can even move it around if you want to get that a little bit bigger. That guy's going to move, so we're going to pick him up. But you always can go back over them in an area, so don't worry about if one got too long, you can cover it up with something else. And we're just going to keep on doing that in layers. You even could bring your mini paintbrush in here if you wanted to and do some of this. You're not going to quite get the built up on the edges, so you want to keep it nice and wet. You could start it with your drop and then just move it around with your paintbrush a little bit. Don't move it too much because you want those edges. That's what gives it the rock look where the ink dries. You want to start thinking about kind of them all connecting. Come in with another color here. Just kind of hit these areas that we haven't have a little bit opening still. Do as many layers as you want. I'm still leaving some of the bottom parts coming through because that's kind of another color in itself, another texture in itself. You always want to heat set your alcohol inks anyway. But then you've got that real kind of rocky looking feel to that. And that's a lot of fun. So you could leave it like that, or if you want to, we can always take our alcohol. We're using the 90% alcohol and hit that. And that'll even give it a different look. If you don't want it to bleed too much, again, hit it with your heat tool. And see, that even changed the look more. So however you feel that the rock kind of look should go. You may like it better before we sprayed it with the alcohol. You may like it better afterwards, but that's how we kind of do our rocks. Let's do a sky. And let's start out with our white mixative. And let's do the whole background first so we don't turn it green. Alright, we're already pretty well dry here. I'll leave that guy open here. And I'm going to be using a color. For some reason they stopped putting some of the colors on our blues. So kind of a sky blue color. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this with our mixative a little bit. And we're going to kind of just play with it. And there will be no right or wrong on it. So I'm just going to put my blue on there, and I'm going to put my blending solution in it. And you can see how it's starting to take off. And you could use your brush if you want to. Now be careful, because we don't want to pick all of this black or white up from the bottom so that it does turn blue. But the mixative will just kind of move it around on us. And we can kind of move it here and there as well. And I'm kind of going up and down instead of across so I don't pick up that white underneath. The mixative also thins the color out. So we may want some thicker colors. And you could do this with your brush or your sponge. You just don't want to slide it. We just want to keep that up and down. And I'm just using it with my finger because I think it's just as easy here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get this covered up, and then we're going to come back in and add some more to it here. And you could play here and see if you like the alcohol inks, or excuse me, using the alcohol better than the additive. I think this is one time that the additive is probably going to give you a little bit more control than the alcohol, but that's a personal opinion. So we've kind of got this all. Now another thing, instead of doing it kind of like I did, you've got some texture into it though, you could add your mix and your blue together and then just wipe them on to have that one coating in the background. But by doing it this way, it's going to give us a little bit different texture. So kind of depending on where you think your sky might be, we're just going to play this around. If your clouds would go one direction or another. You could even add a little bit of silver in here as well. You could use your brush or whatever you want to kind of control it a little bit more. I've kind of got it going the way I want it to look. And I'm going to bring my mix of white in here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of blending solution. I should be doing this on my felt. Let's add the white in. And every one you do is going to look different. There is no right or wrong. But I kind of want to give the sky feel here. Kind of naked piece up. But just continue to play with it until you have it where you like it. The only thing you don't want to do is have the runs down it, so just kind of pick that up. Kind of, like those are kind of cool because they're kind of going off to the side. And if you get a place where the white is coming off, we're just going to put that white right back onto it. So it's not a big deal at all. And however you want to continue playing with that, you may also decide that you like the squirted with the water or the alcohol. You might like that look better. And we'll give this a minute here. I'm going to let this dry just a second, and then we'll squirt it on just to see what it looks like. But it also could be almost kind of a water or an ocean type of thing as well. So just use that, play with it, and see what you like. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this. I like to spray kind of up and then direct it where I want it to go. And that really looks oceany kind of looking. And so then go ahead and heat set that. I've done some sky. Let's do some mountains. And I'm going to use a darker brown. This is espresso. And again, I'm going to start by putting a base down. So any color has some color to it. You see you already kind of got some neat look kind of going with it. And I'm just going to do it straight out of the bottle, but I'm also going to just use an old brush. And you want an old brush, any flat brush or angle brush of any kind is fine, just to kind of spread the color around. So I'm just going to kind of bring it up. We're just going to play with it just a little bit. What I'm trying to do is kind of get the lines to go away on the bottom. We want to leave the lines on the top, but we kind of want to take the lines away on the bottom a little bit and just kind of play that out. We want that front, that top line to remain there though. We're just going to bring that out. I want to get some of these up higher here so they look more like mountains. Before I start to brush it out a little bit. So we've kind of got those going, and then you can bring in second layers. You want to kind of leave some color in between them so that it all blend together. There we go. And I'm going to do maybe just one more right down here. Let's get more of a point. If you kind of let that run down a little bit, it runs down just a little bit beforehand. And isn't that really kind of neat? You could actually come back in with your Q-tip maybe and add just a little bit of yellow in some of these areas we've got really light, just to get another light, another color kind of in there. Just kind of blend it around a little bit, not too much, just to kind of, like I said, get another color. There. Isn't that fun? How simple that was. Don't overthink it, don't overdo it.